Welcome. We are about to begin a comprehensive look at a cultural giant, someone whose most famous creation is, well, a sentient, porous yellow square who happens to live in a pineapple under the sea.
That's right.
Today, we're exploring the really extraordinary life and the dual legacy of Stephen Hillenburg, the animator, the filmmaker, and crucially, the trained marine scientist who gave the world SpongeBob SquarePants.
And this is going to be more than just a biographical sketch.
Yeah.
What we're really trying to do is trace a profound and honestly an almost paradoxical career path.
Mm-hmm.
Hillenburg managed to synthesize two worlds that, most people would assume are completely separate.
Totally separate.
Exactly. You have the rigorous analytical field of marine biology on one side, and then the free-form, surreal world of experimental animation on the other.
And our mission here is to understand how that combination didn't just lead to a successful show. I mean, it led to one of the most commercially dominant media franchises in history.
It's a huge story.
Our sources detail a really fascinating journey. It's rich with personal insights, major career shifts, and this unwavering commitment to creative integrity, even when faced with, billion-dollar success.
And the core idea, the thing you really need to hold on to from the start, is this foundational contradiction. The blueprint for Bikini Bottom wasn't dreamed up in some network writer's room.
No, not at all.
That's right. The very first version of the world's most famous sponge actually came from an educational tool.
It's incredible.
Hillenburg wasn't just some casual ocean enthusiast. He was a trained marine biology teacher. And he wrote and illustrated a specific comic book for his students at the Orange County Marine Institute.
And that comic, The Intertidal Zone, that was it.
That was the genesis. It featured a realistic early version of Bob the Sponge, and it just shows that the humor, the world building, it was all rooted in scientific observation first.
So let's start at the very beginning and map out how those two passions, science and art, really took root. Stephen McDaniel Hillenburg was born in Lawton, Oklahoma in 1961, but he became a Californian very quickly, growing up mainly in Anaheim. And his connection to the ocean, this profound connection, it started incredibly early.
He often pointed to the French oceanographer Jacques Cousteau as a major initial influence.
Right, of course.
Cousteau, through his films and his documentaries, he provided a view into that world that Hillenburg just found completely compelling.
And this wasn't just, watching from a distance.
He was drawn to hands-on exploration.
Yeah.
He'd spend hours exploring local tide pools as a kid, though he did admit in some later interviews that his enthusiasm sometimes got ahead of his knowledge.
What do you mean?
Well, he'd bring specimens home, but they'd end up dying and smelling really bad. So that was kind of an early, maybe unintentional lesson in tide pool ecology.
A practical lesson for sure. And at the same time, paralleling this scientific curiosity, there's undeniable artistic talent.
Yeah, he got his first major artistic validation when he was still in elementary school, specifically third grade.
And it was for a drawing of army men, wasn't it?
It was. But instead of showing them fighting, the typical thing, he drew them kissing and hugging.
Wow.
His teacher praised him for it, and Hillenburg said that was the moment he realized he had some creative skill. He actually connected that artistic side back to his maternal grandmother, who he described as a really gifted painter.
So the seeds for both passions were planted very early, and his exposure to art wasn't just, standard cartoons.
Not at all. In the 1970s, he saw the International Tournée of Animation at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, which, for a kid growing up on commercial TV, was a huge revelation.
I can imagine.
He said he was particularly knocked out by foreign animated films. He cited a Dutch animator, Paul Druysen, and his short film The Killing of an Egg as a major inspiration.
I'm not familiar with that one.
It's known for being very surreal, with a non-linear narrative, and you can just see how that kind of weird experimental style lodged itself in his brain early on.
So as he moved into high school, at Savannah High School in Anaheim, he described himself as a band geek.
Yeah, he played the trumpet. But the ocean was always calling him back. At age 15, he got his first real practical experience snorkeling in Laguna Beach.
And that was part of a school program.
It was a regional occupational program. And that experience really cemented his path toward marine biology.
But he was facing that classic internal conflict during this time.
A very common one, yeah.
Mm.
He loved art, but he saw it as impractical. He believed it was a tough way to make a living.
So his conscious plan, his strategy, was to pursue marine biology as the viable career path.
Exactly. And art would just be for self-expression. That pragmatic choice is what guided him when he went to college.
So he chose the stable route, the natural science route, and enrolled at Humboldt State University.
Right. But even though he majored in natural resource planning with a focus on marine resources, he made sure he minored in art.
So he was still keeping both worlds alive.
Always. He got his degree in 1984, and he noted that he really blossomed as a pretty deliberate attempt to honor both his logical and his creative sides at the same time.
And here's the detail I find so fascinating, the one that perfectly links his student days to his global success. It's the summer jobs he took.
Yes. After high school, during summers, he worked briefly as a fry cook and a lobster boiler
Where was this?
at a fast food, seafood restaurant in Maine. And this seemingly insignificant little entry on his early resume,
That's the Krusty Krab.
that is the direct, real-world inspiration for SpongeBob's job flipping Krabby Patties at the Krusty Krab. It grounds that entire fictional world right in his own history.
It's incredible. So after he graduates in '84, he has a few different jobs. A park service attendant in Utah, an art director in San Francisco. But his real goal was to teach.
Right. And he finally found the perfect position, one that let him share his scientific knowledge. And this brings us to the Orange County Marine Institute era, where the fusion of his passions really begins.
This was a pivotal period for him.
A 3-year period right after college where his science was truly put to work. He was teaching marine biology at the Institute, which is now called the Ocean Institute in Dana Point, California.
And what was he teaching specifically?
It was very hands-on, focused heavily on ecology, specifically tide pool ecology, but also nautical history, species diversity, adaptation.
And teaching these subjects led to that crucial realization, the one that would just redefine his whole career.
It did. He observed this undeniable truth of how, as he put it, enamored kids are with undersea life, especially with tide pool creatures. He saw that these odd, squishy, adapting animals were just inherently captivating for young people.
And this is where the animation seed was really sown.
Explicitly sown. An educational director at the Institute saw his artistic ability and asked him to create a comic book that would help teach the students about the tide pool environment.
Which led directly to the intertidal zone.
Exactly.
We should probably expand on that because it's so much more than just a footnote in his story.
It absolutely is. It was the original source material. He wrote it, he illustrated it, and it featured all these anthropomorphic sea life characters.
Including Bob the Sponge.
Including Bob the Sponge, who was the co-host and narrator of the comic. And this early Bob, as Hillenburg pointed out, was designed to look like a realistic, natural sea sponge.
A real organism.
Right, because as a marine science teacher, that was the correct thing to do biologically.
And the setting itself, the intertidal zone, is so key.
It's absolutely key. The intertidal zone is that area between high and low tide. It's a space defined by constant extreme stress.
Right. Creatures there have to adapt to just rapid changes in temperature, salinity, water level.
And they're under constant threat from predators, both from the sea and from land. So if you think about Bikini Bottom through that ecological lens,
It makes so much sense.
it becomes the perfect metaphor for a chaotic, high-stress environment where characters like SpongeBob and Patrick, who represent species with simple nervous systems, have to rely on quick wit and adaptation just to survive their human-like jobs and social lives. The chaos of the show mirrors the chaos of that zone.
That is a profound connection. It explains why the characters are both humanized, with jobs and houses, but they're still governed by the absurd rules of the ocean.
And he did try to get this comic published, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but he was unsuccessful. But even without publication, the fundamental concepts, the characters, the setting, it was all there, just waiting for his next career pivot.
And despite finding this fulfilling teaching role that used his science background, he eventually realized that his passion for pure creation, for art, was just stronger than his dedication to science education.
Right, and this conviction, it required a very brave and significant career shift.
It was a huge leap.
In 1987, he made what he called the scary leap. He decided to leave teaching and pursue animation formally.
And there's a real irony there, right? Given his earlier belief that art was unstable.
A huge irony. He noted that animation actually turned out to be a pretty healthy career, whereas science education at the time was struggling for funding and stability. His focus immediately shifted to getting formal, serious artistic training.
And to make that transition, he didn't just drift into commercial animation. In 1989, he enrolled in a very specific, highly rigorous program.
The experimental animation program at CalArts, the California Institute of the Arts. And this was a very deliberate choice. He wanted to become a serious filmmaker, a serious artist, and move away from just simple illustration.
The fact that he chose experimental animation seems really important here.
It's vital for understanding his artistic identity. I mean, experimental animation is defined by its focus on abstract forms, on non-narrative storytelling. It often focuses intensely on movement and sound and visual textures rather than, traditional character arcs.
Which is the complete opposite of the commercial work he would eventually become famous for.
The absolute opposite. It just highlights his commitment to art for self-expression, just like he originally planned.
And he was accepted into the program by the founding director, Jules Engel, who was a really influential figure in abstract animation.
And Hillenburg quickly came to see Engel as his art dad, his mentor. What's compelling is that Engel was so impressed by Hillenburg's comic, The Intertidal Zone, that he accepted him even though he had no prior formal animation experience.
So Engel saw the raw talent there.
He did. Engel was a painter himself, and he recognized the inherent artistic background that Hillenburg brought from his painting minor. He successfully graduated in 1992 with a Master of Fine Arts.
And his time at CalArts was incredibly productive. He made these short films that immediately got critical attention at major festivals.
And these films are so essential because they show the surreal, often dark, and intellectually dense humor that defined his early artistic voice. It was a voice he would later, temper for a children's audience.
Let's look at two of those key student films. The first was The Green Beret in 1991.
The Green Beret really demonstrated his taste for the bizarre and the surreal. The premise alone was just odd.
What was it about?
It was about a physically challenged Girl Scout who had these enormous destructive fists. The film showed her causing just utter chaos, toppling houses, destroying entire neighborhoods, all while trying to sell cookies.
So pure, strained, anarchic humor.
Exactly. Heavily influenced by the independent animation scene of the time.
The second film, and maybe the most important for revealing his intellectual curiosity, was his thesis film, Wormholes, from 1992.
Right, and this was a 7-minute film focused on the complex, abstract concept of the theory of relativity.
It's remarkable to contrast the content of Wormholes with the innocence of SpongeBob.
It really is. Here he was, delving into high-concept physics. He described the film in his grant proposal as a poetic animated film based on relativistic phenomena. It wasn't about cute characters, it was about challenging the viewer with visual representations of advanced science. This was a serious achievement.
And a significant one for a student. Wormholes got substantial financial backing from a graduate film scholarship from the Princess Grace Foundation.
Which is a very prestigious foundation.
Right, it supports emerging artists. And Hillenburg said that funding was crucial, that it gave him the freedom to make a truly personal, independent film.
And it went on to win Best Concept at the Ottawa International Animation Festival. It was screened at major international events like Annecy and Hiroshima, and it really established his name in the global animation community.
Critics were impressed too. LA Weekly praised it, calling it road trippy and zap comical. The New York Times called it inventive.
And it was that invention, that exposure at Ottawa, that led directly to his commercial break into television.
The dots connect almost instantly here.
They do. At the 1992 Ottawa Festival, Hillenburg met Joe Murray, the creator of the upcoming Nickelodeon series, Rocko's Modern Life.
And Murray saw Wormholes there?
He did, along with his own short film, and was just so impressed by Hillenburg's unique talent. Murray was in the process of staffing Nickelodeon's first in-house cartoon production, and he offered him a job.
Which must have been a huge relief.
A life raft is what Hillenburg called it. He recalled that at the time, he was financially strained from the loans he'd taken out to make Wormholes, and he was, in his words, planning on being a starving artist.
So he worked on Rocko's Modern Life from 1993 to 1996, and this was his real apprenticeship in commercial television animation.
It was. He held a huge array of roles. Director, producer, writer, storyboard artist, and eventually creative director for the final season.
This period taught him the commercial realities of the industry.
It did. He credited this time with teaching him a great deal about writing and producing animation for TV. And you have to recognize the difference in style. Rocko was edgy, it was satirical, aimed at a slightly older, more cynical demographic.
So he was learning the craft of mass production, of narrative pacing.
Exactly. Even if his own creation would eventually lean much more toward innocence than satire.
And there was clear foreshadowing during his time on that show.
Absolutely. He co-wrote and directed an episode called Fish and Chumps, which featured anthropomorphic sea creatures trying to catch Rocko and his friends from under the water.
So The concept of human-like fish interacting with the terrestrial world was already brewing.
It was fermenting, yeah. You could see the pieces coming together.
So as Hillenburg is mastering the mechanics of commercial animation on Rocco, his original concept, that little comic book, it never left his side.
No, and the push to turn it into a full show actually came from a trusted colleague, Martin Olson, a writer on Rocco's Modern Life.
And he had read the intertitle zone.
He had, and he was the one who really encouraged Hillenburg to spin it off into a full TV series.
But Hillenburg's initial reaction was resistance.
It was. He had seen the intense stress and sacrifice that Joe Murray went through leading a major show, and he thought, I would never want to produce a show of my own. He had a very deep appreciation for the effort it took.
But the idea was just too compelling to ignore.
It was. He described the definitive aha moment happening one day when he was driving toward the beach. He just suddenly realized the synthesis was complete.
And he put it perfectly, saying, all those things I lectured about and obsessed about would make for an interesting world.
The biology and the comedy could finally coexist.
He established the core concept immediately. The show needed to be set in a small underwater town where the characters behaved fundamentally like humans.
Right, they drive boats. Even though they're underwater, they have houses, they have pets, they celebrate holidays.
And most bizarrely, they even use fire.
Which makes no sense, but it's perfect. The goal was to create a world that felt, as he said, fantastic but believable. It was a blend of recognizable human society applied to an absurd aquatic environment.
And this desire for innocence led him directly to his choice for the protagonist.
Yes, he wanted a central character who was purely childlike and innocent, and he focused on the sea sponge because it's a funny animal, a strange one. It was a blank slate for personality.
And the visual design went through a crucial evolution at this point.
A really key evolution. He started with Bob the Sponge, the realistic, lumpy sea sponge from his comic. But as he developed the character's manic, optimistic personality, he realized that realistic shape just didn't match the energy he wanted to convey.
So he abstracted it.
He abstracted the shape entirely, shifting to the now iconic square, just like a kitchen sponge.
And that choice, moving away from scientific reality toward artistic absurdity, was completely deliberate.
Oh, completely. He said the square shape looked so funny, and it perfectly encapsulated the character's core identity as a somewhat nerdy, squeaky, clean oddball. The squareness added this visual rigidity that contrasted hilariously with the character's fluid, enthusiastic movements.
And the personality itself was a masterclass in drawing from classic comedy.
Absolutely. He cited cinematic innocence as his muses, Charlie Chaplin, Laurel and Hardy, Jerry Lewis, and Pee Wee Herman.
So from Chaplin and Laurel and Hardy, he drew that core physical comedy, the optimism.
The enduring innocence that somehow prevails despite constant chaos.
Mm.
And then from Jerry Lewis and Pee Wee Herman, he took that manic energy, the high-pitched voice, and just the capacity for sheer, joyful absurdity.
And to embody that perfect blend of innocence and mania, he hired Tom Kenny,
A veteran voice actor whose career also launched on Rocco's Modern Life. And Hillenburg actually leveraged elements of Kenny's own personality, his tendency for high-energy voices and sound effects, to really cement the character during development.
The moment of the pitch to Nickelodeon executives, including Eric Coleman, has become legendary.
It has, because Hillenburg just fully committed to the vision.
He walked into the pitch meeting wearing a loud Hawaiian shirt.
And instead of just using storyboards, he presented the concept using an actual underwater terrarium with models of the characters, and he set the whole mood with Hawaiian music.
It must have been a bizarre, fully immersive presentation.
It was, and it successfully sold the creative vision. Coleman later described the whole setup as pretty amazing.
The pitch was successful, and SpongeBob SquarePants premiered as Nickelodeon's first original Saturday morning cartoon on May 1st, 1999.
And the foundational premise, the one Hillenburg returned to again and again, was simple. Innocence prevails.
And the immediate explosion in popularity was something he genuinely never saw coming.
Never. Within its first month, it leapfrogged over Pokemon to become the highest-rated Saturday morning children's series. By the end of 2001, it was the highest-rated children's series on all of cable.
And this is where the show's cultural impact just broadened significantly. Nickelodeon made the strategic decision to start airing SpongeBob in their primetime block.
Monday through Thursday, yeah. And that just dramatically increased its older viewership. By May 2002, it was reaching 20 million viewers aged 18 to 49.
And that older demographics engagement is so critical to understanding the show's lasting power.
And Hillenburg admitted his expectations were modest. He figured they might get a season and a cult following, and that might be it. The adult viewership was shocking to him.
But if you look at the show's structure, it makes sense.
It does. The elements that drew in the 18 to 49 demographic weren't the standard lessons for kids. They were the layers of surrealism, the non sequiturs, and the subtly subversive adult humor, the same elements he explored in his experimental animation background.
I mean, think about the core conflicts, like the relentless war between Mr. Krabs and Plankton over the Krabby Patty formula.
Right.
That's high-stakes corporate espionage and evolutionary struggle disguised as a cartoon rivalry.
Exactly. Mr. Krabs represents capitalistic territorialism, protecting his resource, while Plankton embodies the perpetually frustrated evolutionary challenger. The sophisticated absurdity of those themes, wrapped in bright colors and squeaky voices, is what captured the attention of adults.
That combination of scientific grounding, high-concept absurdity, and pure, unfiltered innocence just propelled the show into the stratosphere.
It became Nickelodeon's longest-running series, and by 2015, the franchise had generated an estimated $25 billion in merchandising revenue. It was a force of nature, all driven by this one unique creative vision.
So after 3 incredibly successful seasons, Hillenburg made a choice that is, well, very rare for the creator of such a massive hit.
Extremely rare.
In 2002, he decided to intentionally stop production on the series to focus exclusively on the feature film, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, which came out in 2004.
And his reasoning for this was comprehensive. On one hand, yes, he wanted to pour all his creative energy into making sure the film was a quality production.
But more critically, he originally intended for that movie to be the series finale.
He did. He felt the series had reached its natural lifespan for an animated show, about 60 episodes, and he was determined to end it before it started to compromise its quality or, as he put it, before it jumped the shark.
That position put him directly at odds with the network.
Directly. As storyboard director Sam Henderson revealed, Nickelodeon saw the show as such a cash cow that the financial imperative was just too great. They couldn't afford not to continue the series, regardless of Hillenburg's artistic desire to end it.
The show's own success basically altered the landscape of that creative decision.
It did, and during the production of that 2004 film, Hillenburg suffered a personal loss. His mentor from CalArts, Jules Engel, passed away.
His art dad.
His art dad, yeah. And Hillenburg dedicated the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, which went on to gross $140 million worldwide, to Engel's memory. He said Engel was truly the most influential artistic person in his life.
Following the film's release, Hillenburg officially resigned as the showrunner in 2004, handing the reins to his trusted colleague, Paul Tibbitt.
And he explained that decision by saying he felt he had contributed a lot and said what he wanted to say. He believed the show needed an infusion of new energy, new blood, to continue without stagnating.
He didn't disappear entirely, though.
Not at all. He maintained a crucial advisory role, holding an executive producer credit. This allowed him to review every single episode to make sure that the core spirit, the continuity, and the quality of the show remained aligned with his original vision.
He also had a small, visible role early on.
Right. He provided the original voice for Potty the Parrot, Patchy the Pirate's cynical pet, until Paul Tibbitt took over that voice role during season 4.
It's interesting that despite creating a character who is synonymous with global fame, Hillenburg himself was intensely private.
Very private. People who worked with him described him as a perfectionist workaholic, but also very shy. He was highly protective of his non-professional life, stating openly that he had no real interest to be on camera or to be a celebrity. He preferred the quiet anonymity of creation.
And his personal life, while private, remained a source of grounding for him.
It did. In 1998, he married Karen Umland, who was a respected Southern Californian chef. And he paid a sweet tribute to her by naming Plankton's computer wife, Karen Plankton, after her.
They had one son together.
Yes, and Hillenburg enjoyed simple family time, especially jamming with him. Hillenburg played guitar while his son played the drums, and he described it as a great way to bond.
Beyond his own family, his vast commercial success allowed for substantial philanthropic efforts, mostly through the United Plankton Charitable Trust.
Right. He established United Plankton Pictures, Inc. in 1998, and then the Charitable Trust in 2005 with his wife, Karen.
And the grants they distributed, they're fascinating because they really mirror the balance of his life.
They do. Art, science, and social welfare. They consistently supported arts organizations like the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, which reflects his lifelong appreciation for painting and independent film.
Health and education were also major focuses, representing his and Karen's personal commitments.
Right. Health grant recipients included Planned Parenthood, where his wife served on the board, and the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. So you see this deliberate choice to fund organizations supporting reproductive health and neurological disease research.
And crucially, he never forgot his academic origins.
Never. The trust made significant commitments back to his alma mater and the marine community. They funded projects like the HSU Marine Lab and established the Stephen Hillenburg Marine Science Research Award Endowment at Humboldt State.
And that endowment specifically supports marine science research students.
Exactly, ensuring his original passion continues to be studied by the next generation. They also endowed the Stephen Hillenburg Animation Scholarship at the Princess Grace Foundation, paying forward the financial assistance he received early in his own career.
Then, in March 2017, Hillenburg chose to share a deeply personal and difficult health update.
Yes, he disclosed publicly that he had been diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS, the progressive neurodegenerative disease also known as Lou Gehrig's disease.
And this diagnosis came while he was still actively involved as an executive producer on the show.
Which represents a profound challenge.
Yeah.
ALS is known for its relentless progression. It affects nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord, leading to loss of muscle control.
And he faced the illness with quiet determination.
He did. He confirmed that he would continue to work on SpongeBob SquarePants for as long as he possibly could, while respectfully asking for privacy for his family during that very challenging time.
We can understand the tremendous physical toll this must have taken. Our sources indicate that as the disease advanced, it began to severely hamper his ability to work.
Right. In his final period as executive producer, the progression meant he had increasing difficulty speaking. Eventually, he reached a point where he just stopped being able to go to his office at all.
But he kept his word, staying committed to the show's quality review process right until the very end. Stephen Hillenburg passed away on November 26, 2018. He was only 57 years old. He passed at his home in San Marino, California.
And there's a deeply poignant detail regarding his final disposition, a fitting tribute to his lifelong obsession with the world he brought to life.
His body was cremated and his ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California the following day. His passing triggered immediate global and widespread tributes. It just demonstrates the sheer scale and reach of his creation.
It really does. Both the theatrical film The SpongeBob Movie, Sponge on the Run in 2020, and the TV special SpongeBob's Big Birthday Blowout were dedicated to his memory.
And one of the most unexpected and public tributes, which really showed the cultural crossover of the show, happened during the Super Bowl halftime show in 2019.
Right. The band Maroon 5, while performing, arranged to use a clip from that beloved SpongeBob episode, Band Geeks.
Sweet victory.
The Sweet Victory scene, as a direct and emotional tribute to him.
That moment, which bridged children's animation in this mainstream sports spectacle, it just highlighted the show's adult nostalgic appeal.
And it continued. Later, the Dallas Stars NHL team incorporated a modified, full version of that sequence into their own in-arena presentation. It solidified that piece of animation as a recognizable cultural artifact.
And beyond the world of pop culture, his original passion received a lasting scientific honor, which, he perhaps would have appreciated most of all.
Yes. A newly described marine demisponge species, discovered off the coast of Brazil, was officially named Calathria hillenburgi in his honor.
This detail provides such a perfect closing of the loop between his two careers.
It really does.
And for clarity for our listeners, a demisponge is one of the most common types of sea sponges. They make up about 90% of all known species.
And unlike the fictional square yellow version, real demisponges are often duller in color and irregular in shape. The fact that a legitimate scientific finding was named after him, a species from the same phylum he studied, is just a magnificent confirmation of his dual identity.
And in 2021, a more physical, personalized memorial was dedicated at his high school, Savannah High in Anaheim.
His wife, Karen, helped choose a memorial yellow bench and a historical plaque. And she noted that she specifically chose the bright color because she felt perfectly captured her husband's warmth and goofiness.
It's a very human perspective on his legacy. Now, while his legacy is immense, the challenge of continuing a creative vision without its original creator inevitably led to some creative tension. This is common in successful franchises.
Very common. And this tension centers specifically on the spin-offs developed after his passing, like Camp Coral, SpongeBob's Underyears, which features younger versions of the main characters at summer camp.
And this concept wasn't just a later network decision. It was a known point of artistic conflict during his lifetime.
It was. Former showrunner Paul Tibbitt released a statement expressing his certainty that Hillenburg would have hated the idea of SpongeBob babies.
Tibbitt's recollection provides a very strong commentary on Hillenburg's creative integrity.
It does. Tibbitt recalled Hillenburg explicitly saying, and this is a powerful quote, one of these days they're going to want to make SpongeBob babies. That's when I'm out of here.
Wow.
So this just illustrates that constant tension we often see between a creator's original finite vision, which Hillenburg felt he wrapped up with the 2004 movie, and the immense commercial pressure to exploit profitable characters endlessly.
He prioritized the purity of his characters' adult dynamic and their established world. He refused to regress them into a childhood environment.
And the ongoing production of these spin-offs, despite the creator's explicit wishes, it just underscores the scale of the financial machine that he built.
When we look back at the life of Stephen Hillenburg, what we're really observing is a man who was initially told by society and by his own pragmatism that he had to choose between being a marine biologist and being an artist.
Right. And his global success was achieved precisely because he refused to make that choice. He found the intersection where scientific observation and abstract humor could produce something completely unique. His career is just an extraordinary testament to the power of synthesis. His decision to combine his two loves, the ecology of the ocean and the anarchic freedom of animation, resulted in a cultural force that bridged age gaps. It taught basic marine science concepts to millions of kids, probably unintentionally.
Sure.
And it appealed to adults with all these layers of intellectual and surreal humor. He took his early commitment to experimental art, and he applied that sensibility to commercial animation, and he created something genuinely new.
His life and his work, they offer a fascinating challenge for us to consider as we conclude this exploration. Consider the content of his thesis film, Wormholes, which wrestled with the dense, complex theory of relativity with high-concept physics and abstract visuals. Now, compare that intellectual ambition with the founding, simple, and utterly optimistic premise of his enduring masterpiece, SpongeBob SquarePants, which was built on the idea that innocence prevails. It raises the question, how did Hillenburg reconcile the heavy, often dark, adult intellectual themes he explored in his experimental animation with the pure, unwavering, childlike optimism he ultimately championed in the work that defined his entire creative career?
It suggests that perhaps the greatest artistic success comes not from complexity, but from finding a simple, pure truth like the enduring optimism of the square yellow sponge, and then using your deep, multifaceted knowledge base to bring that truth to life.
Thanks for listening.